Russ, dude, cannot thank you enough for taking the time. For those of you that are just joining us, we got Russell White on today, president of the Collective Association, the TCA, who we're a proud, partner founding member with. Obviously, Russ, a lot going on within the world of collectives to calling them agencies, rev sharing. We had scheduled this for the audience months in advance. We didn't know that we would be getting Russ kind of like on the tail end of what is probably the largest shakeup in college athletics and maybe ever, and certainly something that's going to have a direct impact on a lot of the members of your institution. Same kind of rules apply as always, gang. Please feel free to drop questions into the chat. We'll get to them kind of throughout this. We'll go through probably a 15-20 minutes of questions that we've just had canned, and I've gotten from others that maybe we were chatting with you. I'll start though with a quick intro. I met Russ kind of through my work with supporting a lot of collectives within the space. Russ, before he was the president of the TCA, was and still is with Encore, running a handful of collectives across the country. Ionia, BYU, Arizona State, a handful of others that we connected with along the way. Based in Utah, pro sports background, agency background, obviously collective, executive director, management background, and now currently the president of the TCA. Super excited to have you on, man, and we've got certainly no shortage of things to talk about.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's funny how we when we first sat and talked about this, you and Zoe and I, and let's have you on after this. We're going to announce the partnership with Basepath and Collective Association. And on that day, I did not know that we'd be sitting here the week after this settlement and all the questions that have been raised. So it's been preparing for this in the lead up has been a lot of fun. A little bit different than expected, but
yeah,
I'm
no.
Here.
But dude, there's no one I'd rather be talking to right now than you. Let's just jump right into it. Collectives in a rev sharing world.
Yeah.
How do they fit?
Nicely, very nicely. Collectives, I said this in an interview a while ago, collectives aren't going anywhere. They need to adapt. We will need to adapt in certain ways. With every institution kind of having the ability to manage that revenue share piece how they want to, there will be different fits in different places around the country. So I think for us as the association that supports these collectives, we're all about providing information as we get it, best practices, making sure that they're prepared to adjust however they need to. But the core mission of a collective is not going to change. And the core mission of the collective association of supporting them is not going to change, right? We're there to help bring NIL opportunities and maximize those. We're there to provide support for all of the athletes at the universities that are collective support, and provide resources that maybe they're not receiving from the universities that they should be. We got to remember universities now have 22% less revenue. So how where are the cuts going to come? We'll see. And collectives, I think, will be able to step in and fill some of those gaps with resources and through partnerships with the university. That's the goal. So
yeah, I'll take it straight from there to the next one. We've had a lot of conversations. So obviously we work with a ton of collectives too. One of the reasons why we're super excited to be a part of the TCA and support your mission and your members' mission. A lot of universities and institutions are dealing with, they're trying to wrap their heads around what the liabilities are around actually managing the operations of NIL, whether it's Title IX, whether it's employment status, whether it's FOIA liability, whether it's tax exempt status liability. Have you been seeing kind of, I'll say what we've been seeing, where schools, collectives are actually kind of coming together to try to help facilitate that and maybe even using the collective as a kind of operational engine for what we're about to have to take on?
yeah, and I think that's what we're going to see for the most part. I recognize there's been this kind of said, unsaid battle between collectives and the NCAA, or collectives and institutions. In reality, a lot of institutions are working very closely with their collectives already. There is some benefit or some school of thought, I guess, not really benefit, school of thought that bringing that in-house is a positive thing for the university. I am of the opinion that having seen day to day firsthand what it takes to operate an actual professional collective, um, for lack of a better term, that the people do not exist inside of athletic departments currently to do that,
Sure.
especially to the level they would need to.
Hit us with some of those things because we've got a lot of folks from athletic departments that join and watch these things. Like, what are some of the things if you're in an athletic department that you need to be thinking about or preparing yourself for if you're going to actually take this thing on for yourself?
I mean, negotiating deals with a fair market value idea of what that is, negotiating with the athlete and then the agent and then the parent and then the agent and the parent together and then the athlete and the agent together and that story changing a bunch of times. And then, the support of, okay, what do we do now? Well, how are we need to set up a bank account? Do we need to set up a business entity? Do we have to pay taxes? All of those different things. Collectives help with all of that. And then you get into, okay, I'm getting this money. What do I have to do? Well, you've got to do this and this and this deliverable. The collective helps them fulfill those. I mean, these athletes, it's not as if you just hand it over to them and everything gets done. And then on top of that, every time the transfer portal comes up, they're talking to each other. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? Well, you've got to have contracts written and built in a way that protect the collective against, people jumping from place to place, but also incentivize them to be a part of what you're doing, and not look to jump. And so that is more, I think those opportunities are more value-based than dollar-based. If you're creating a great experience for them on top of the money, they're not going to look somewhere else for it. And I think that is how you create this continuity and rosters and things. Also 10 p.m. phone calls, 1 a.m. phone calls. Hopefully they're not, can you bail me out? Hopefully they're more along the lines of like, my car got towed. Can you help me get that taken care of or stuff like that? These are all calls we've gotten and I know people
Oh.
get all the time. I was talking to Jeremy Smith, who runs Garnett Trust at South Carolina just the other day. And he's talking to me about how he and his wife sit down to watch TV and he cannot make it through a 30-minute show without having to stop and deal with something, and that it really irritates his wife. And uh, I don't see currently athletic departments don't have those individuals in there with that level of expertise. The people running these collectives are former executives at a bunch of different companies, marketing companies, sports business, sports organizations all across the board. That level of expertise does not exist in most athletic departments. And so it's losing 22% of your revenue or now having to share it. You're going to have to cut staff. Hopefully they don't cut too many. Hopefully they don't cut too many sports. If they do, how are you going to cut, and then add this level of
Sure.
professionalism? It doesn't make sense. So a third party partnership and working closely together is, I think, the best move for everybody.
About fair market value, that's a question that's come up seemingly on all sides of the coin, whether it's the collective, the institution, the NCAA is obviously bringing it up as part of the settlement. Where are you guys going to find some of that fair market value and trying to actually understand what it is, if it's just to be defensible or if it's for, trying to prepare yourself to spend more wisely?
Yeah, I think that's something that everyone's trying to figure out the best way to do, right? Because if you take a step back and take college out of it, professional athletes, celebrities, there've always been this endorsement world, okay, and
Sure.
quote unquote NIL endorsement world. And fair market value there has always been what somebody's willing to pay. If somebody's willing to give you 100 grand to do something, okay, that's worth it for them.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna say no. Unless you're worth 200 grand, right? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a moving target all the time. And there are tools out there. I know we have data sets throughout the industry and different partners that provide those. We at TCA have pushed for finding a way and have actually actively looked for a way and are currently looking for a way where maybe we could be a resource where that information is provided. On the legal side, we want to make sure it would be done above board through a third party, just facilitated with us, so that it doesn't come off as collusion or anything like that.
Sure.
But
Sure. Sure.
80% of the money is moving through collectives right now. So we have a pretty good idea of what people are asking for, what people are paying, and it varies by sport and conference and all that. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be, can you now picture people in the athletic department going through and trying to figure that out with people in other athletic departments across the country? And nobody wants to disclose the information to the NCAA because, let's be clear, nobody trusts the NCAA. So this is a situation where, I see you trying not to laugh. This
That
is a
is.
situation where there's got to be a way to figure out. I don't think fair market value is something that could be enforceable, is what I'm saying. Also, a lot of these things that they're saying they're going to put in place have not been collectively bargained at all with athletes in any way, shape, or
Was going to
form.
be my next question is, the news came out that you guys are creating kind of a athlete advisory board, I think is the term. Correct me if I'm
Yep.
wrong. There are obviously some others out there that are trying to, we had Brandon Copeland on a couple weeks ago, with AO. They're obviously trying to do some really exciting things as it relates to, bringing athletes to the table. Um, where do you see the athlete's voice being a part of this, you know, continuous evolution of what we just saw with the settlement?
Yeah, it needs to be. And I think we need to do our best to help facilitate that, whatever that looks like. So we took a step back a little while ago and said, our collectives aren't paying every athlete at every school, but we work with a good amount of athletes at each school. If we were to provide resources, say we provide financial literacy education, we make that available to every athlete. Some of these other resources that are provided through different collectives. In essence, if you added up all of the athletes at all the collectives at the schools that we work with, we just added 2 more collectives. I can't announce them, but I got yeses on them yesterday and today.
Oh, dude.
So we're up around 40. You add those guys in, and we are around 27,000 athletes that are a part of the
Wow.
collectives that we work with. So that's a big thing behind our athlete advisory committee is hey, let us know what the athletes at your school are thinking. What do they want? What do they
Sure.
need? What's important to them? There's a massive opportunity there for us to give the athletes a voice. I mean, we're heavily involved in DC, as you know. I'll be back there again next week. We're in the room with congressional and Senate leaders. The actual members of Congress sit in on our meetings. It's not always just staffers. And so we're very ingrained in what's taking place. If we can get the athletes to make those trips with us to DC or join those Zooms with us when we're on with lawmakers and they can share their point of view, it rings home so much louder because that's the individual whose experiences, that's the individual who all these decisions are being made
Right.
that impact them, and they don't have a voice. So where we started as we're going to help pay athletes and provide resources, now we see we can also provide them a voice at the higher levels where it needs to be heard, that can hopefully help build this ecosystem going forward in a positive way.
That in terms of the structure of that athlete advisory committee, like, do you guys have any, sense of what that's going to look like? Is it going to be a captain per campus, or how are you planning on doing that?
Yeah, starting off, we're looking at 2 to 4 athletes per collective. We want male and female. We want revenue and non-revenue generating sports. We want to hear from the male tennis player as much as we do the female basketball star. We want, and we're going back and forth on how long their term will be because it's not something we also want to be overbearing with their school and
Sure.
everything else they have going on. But 6-month terms maybe where we rotate through. They basically just check in with the athlete body, make sure that the athletes on campus are aware that they're representative, and then they report back to us, and we hold meetings with them. We'll hold Zooms with them just to get updates on what's going on. If there's a hot topic, let us know your thoughts. It'll all come back up through us, and then when we have these Zooms each week with representatives from Colorado and California and New Mexico and Florida, wherever, we can pluck members of this athlete advisory committee that represent their other athletes at the University of Florida. Tell
Sure.
Zoe, sorry, it's not Zoe, she's not here, but everyone else, the actual athlete at Florida, can hop on and tell the congressional leaders that represent Florida, this is what's important to us at the University of Florida. And we just feel like we have a great platform to do that based off of the
Sure.
work we've already done through the collectives and the relationships we have with the athletes we serve.
That's awesome. You talked just a little bit about adding new members. It's not new. I was on a call yesterday with a group of 5 collective, and they were asking if, hey, they saw that we had joined up, and they were like, hey, how do we get involved? Just from your side, who are members that you're looking to bring on these days, and what's the best way to get involved and to become a part of this movement?
Send them our way. We just kind of voted or talked as a board and decided that we are going to expand to group of 5. We
Put
actually
it here first, folks.
we actually see a massive opportunity there for collectives. So talking about revenue sharing at the P4 level, they can opt in up to that 22%. We're looking 20 to 22 million.
Yep.
of the budget. Group of 5 universities are not going to opt in at 20 something million dollars of
Right.
revenue because their budgets just are not comparable.
Right.
So will they opt in at some level? Who knows? If not, and even if they do, their collective becomes even more important, because that's how you're going to bring money in to attract and retain talent. And
Sure.
so it
I mean,
becomes more important. And if
right,
we
like,
can help them with shared best practices and support and all these other things we're doing, then we'd love to have them on board.
yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to see how at the Power Four, like it is true rev sharing as these TV deals continue to inflate, it's just moving that money. If you're at the group of 5, like you just don't have $1 billion TV contract
Right.
to pull those resources from. And I'd say operationally, those tend to be the departments that are already most strapped.
Yes.
Like you've got folks that are doing at least 1.5 jobs, and more often than not, 3 to 4. So to add more operational complexity into the department, it does feel like it's a place where the collective really does fit nicely to just add support to the ecosystem.
When
Um,
the universities who recognize that and start to use, and this is P4 as well, if they
sure.
start viewing their collectives as force multipliers and not someone who's fighting against them, the
Yep.
support that they get on the effort and workflow side, the way they can bring money in, the experiences that are created by collectives, let's be honest, you donate to a university, what do you get back? You get a thank you card and the opportunity to buy tickets earlier. That's about
Right.
it.
I mean,
You
dude,
donate, you know
we
where the
have a
money
guy who
goes.
leads up NIL internally from Minnesota, and Jeremiah Carter and Derek Burns, who leads up the
Yeah.
Dinkytown Collective, last week, and they were just talking about, it was literally the day that the settlement was at least, announced. And at the time, they were basically just like, why would we throw away what these guys have taken 2 years to build? And
Yeah.
it's, meaningful value. They've engaged with fans in ways that, you know, is clearly value add to these folks because they're continuing to support and be members and subscribers, and maybe in ways that the department has never been able to or willing to do. And so, I mean, I think there's certainly, I love the term force multiplier. It feels like that's truly what can be there, with the right kind of mindset, and literally and really leveraging some of the unique capabilities that these collectives have tapped into. Um, the agency association instead of the collective association, is that going to be the name in a year? We've
Yeah,
been hearing a lot
I
of
like it.
collectives kind of transform into, we're no longer, the collective, we're the agency.
Yeah.
um
I don't know. We'll see if we need to do some paperwork changes. This is the thing. The collective association and the word collective to describe what these groups are, I'd love to know who came up with it. I mean, I think
I
it's a
think it was
group
a
of
guy in Florida.
yeah, that's probably, yeah,
The
I guess
Gator
so.
Collective. That's
Yeah. So it's like, hey, we're a collective. We're a group of individuals and brands and
Jeremy needed
companies.
to do a better job of marketing Garnet Trust. We could have had all trusts. It could have been the
I know,
Trust Association.
I know. If you would have hopped out earlier, come on, bro.
Yeah,
Um,
dude.
No, but I think that that name is stuck, obviously, and that's what it's part of. If we need to change the name, sure. But I do think, some already
I
operate as
care less,
agents.
dude. I care
I
less about
know,
the name. I'm more
I
curious,
know.
like, do you see, like, for me, so we're talking with a handful of folks that
Yeah.
are in the process of making this change. For all intents and purposes, it looks very similar to a collective.
Mhm.
They're obviously like, shifting a little bit more of their focus to how do we provide like true marketing agency services. But if it looks and smells like a collective, it's probably a collective, right?
A
But
lot
just
of,
on
I
your
would say a lot
perspective,
of collectives are already operating as agencies. You look at
agreed,
Spot at Tennessee, that's actually an agency.
right?
The Grove Collective, they operate as an agency as well. A lot of them already operate as agencies because what does an agency provide? Right there, you go. You got the Grove thing. What do agencies offer right now that collectives don't? I mean, in some cases, not much. Like they're out there trying to source deals on behalf of athletes. There's
Sure.
people and brands donating to their cause that then the money is being distributed to the athletes in exchange for some type of activity. So that's what agencies do as well. A lot of collectives are providing resources, whether it's even like PR support where needed, but some have provided some social media support. Again, financial literacy, tax education, investment education, or at least vetting people. And then saying these people are, kind of through our group, these are people we'd recommend for athletes to go on their own. Like, I think there's different services already being provided by collectives that agencies would provide. So the shift sounds monumental that, oh, now they're all going to be agencies, but it's already been taking place and some already
Yeah.
operate kind of fully that way. So
I would say it doesn't feel monumental at all. It feels actually pretty simple
yeah,
for some of these things to happen. I mean, they've got a lot of the infrastructure and kind of core features of that, like you mentioned, just already in place. It's
yeah,
maybe just a slight rebranding to, freshen it up as we head into a new model. Um, you talked about the educational side. I know you guys are very much focused on continuing to provide educational resources to student athletes, to your collective member partners. What are some of the ways that you guys are helping? I know you just listed off a handful, but
yeah.
really trying to add an educational focus into this process to help support your members and athletes.
So I'll tell you, there are a couple of groups that we're working with that as we add them as what we're calling affiliate members or founding members, like what
Sure.
Basepath of TCA, that their services will then be available either for free or at a discounted rate to all of our member collectives. So, for example, we work with a group that provides tutoring, right? Online tutoring or in-person tutoring. It's all through a system that it's kind of like the Uber of tutoring is the way we call it. Like you can
Love
get
it.
access to a ton of people. There's universities that have seen this product that maybe they had 2 or 3 math tutors available is all for every athlete. But on their campus, there's 250 qualified people that have signed up to be tutors for certain math classes that these individuals can now work with. So our goal is to have that program available to every member collective. And if they opt to utilize it, every athlete at the school would have access to it. And so we're going to build out that suite. We already are of service providers who are members of affiliate members or partners of TCA, who their services are then available to all the athletes affiliated with collectives that are members of TCA. So building out this whole kind of educational structure, whether it is, again, I keep hitting financial literacy, but I think that's the most
Yeah.
important. Like that's the kids need to understand
Right.
we're getting we're getting money now. What does that mean?
Right.
Like tax wise, investment wise, do I run it through an entity? Do I have it straight to myself? How does all this work? I think that providing professionals and services that can help them with that is a huge value add for what we bring to the table, on top of the best practices we share with collectives, on top of the advocacy and lobbying work that we're a part of that impacts them. I just think that there's a huge opportunity for us to add all of that value to these athletes through their collectives. So we're going to continue to do that. We'll build some stuff out over the next few months. We'll be able to announce a couple of those. And I think that our association is going to keep growing
Awesome.
and providing this benefit.
Very cool. We talked about the agency side of the house and particularly serving as more of a marketing agency for student athletes. MMR partners for these institutions are starting to kind of wake up and involve themselves more into the NIL world and process. Where do you see collective slash marketing agencies providing, incremental value on top of what these universities are already getting from the Learfields, Playflies, JMIs of the world?
Yeah. I've been a little surprised that those groups haven't been more active. To be honest, I saw something a
Sure.
little while ago that said through, I think it was Learfields at 150, 160 schools, something of that, somewhere around there.
Sure.
They generated like $13 million over the last year for athletes. And I was just like, well, that's one Big 12 collective.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
like I feel
Yeah.
like I
That's
actually
one
felt,
Big 12 football
yes, that's
like
one Big
budget,
12,
honestly.
that's one Big 12 football team. But I looked at that and I thought, there's a huge opportunity for them to work with the collective at their school and actually just work together, because every brand who's spending money as a corporate partner should be integrating these athletes into their ads, whatever they're doing. Unless they're just throwing up a sign and kind of that's our sponsorship, that old school way of thinking. If that's what they're doing, then you should probably change your MMR partner or your in-house team, because that's a waste of time and energy and everybody's money. But if they're actually doing what they should and creating experiences and memorable opportunities for that brand to reach the fans, utilize these athletes in those advertisements, in those events, in those activities, and you can facilitate and run all of that through the collective. Collectives don't take a percentage on money that goes to the kids. We don't sit there and do a deal and take 25% off the top through our collective. Like other agencies do that. Agencies do that. Our agency for athletes that we work with, We have a standard fee of deals we take to them. We take that off. On the agency side, we work with about 9 NFL athletes. We do that there. On the collective side of things, your collectives aren't doing deals with brands and cutting a huge piece off the top to keep for themselves. That money is flowing to the athletes, especially in situations like that from a corporate partner. So
I
it's
think that is one of the big misperceptions of collectives generally is like, these guys are just in it to make a quick buck. It's, the industry moved a little bit faster than, folks could have gone ahead. And the fact of the matter is I can't think of a single collective that we've seen, and certainly ones that we've worked with that are, you know, taking money out of the athletes' pockets in a way that would be a disservice to them. Like certainly there's a little bit of overhead that comes along with
sure.
Systems and people that are helping to manage this stuff, but it's you know all very fair. You
It's a
know,
business. It's a
yeah,
business at the end of the
right.
day. I think one of the
And a lot
reasons,
of them are setting themselves up as like not-for-profit LLCs, which is to say, like, hey, we're not going to be a 501c3, but we will be a not-for-profit organization for the benefit of these athletes.
yeah, I
And
think
even the ones that are doing are running so lean that
crazy.
yeah,
It almost is a disservice, and this is on the behalf of universities push this very hard, especially those in athletic departments who wanted to maintain control. Early on, would say, "Oh, well, if you're a collective, you got to do it for free," or "Oh, if you can find a group that can cover a couple percent, but you have to keep your own 97% needs to go to the athletes." Then that's not going to work. Like, as this is professionalized, you need a staff to do those things. You need someone to facilitate it. You need software to be able to track it all, right? Like all these things. So the universities who supported collectives early on and realized they needed to be run as businesses responsibly, but as businesses and not as this, everyone's going to volunteer and give their time because they love the school.
sure.
The ones who did that are the ones who are so far out in front, successful. Other ones are catching up because I think most collectives now in their universities realize the way it has to operate. But yeah, I think again, as the space has professionalized over time, that kind of has moved on, and it's like a reasonable business operation. Majority of the money is going to the athletes. All the other support that they're receiving is huge. And I think integrating them with corporate partners of the university or the athletic department is a no-brainer that needs to happen more. Needs to happen
What
a
are
lot.
the best ways for collectives and schools to come together? I mean, we have some partners that are just the relationship is so strong, the
Yeah.
trust is so high. We get questions all the time from like, how do I get my athletic department to like truly believe that we're not trying to steal from them or steal
Yeah.
from their athletes? Like we're actually trying to help and we're trying to do a service because we love these kids, we love these teams, we love our school. Like we're really trying to provide a benefit. What are some of the best ways that you've seen to really kind of bridge that um gap between, if there is one, between the collectives and the schools?
Yeah, naturally, from the beginning, athletic departments were against collectives. They didn't want anybody else coming in, taking their donors, their money. They didn't want to direct things their way.
Sure.
Understandable, right? They're very siloed. We need to hang on to what's ours. They very quickly started to realize, well, we've got to be competitive, or else none of this other stuff matters because our partnership will go down, our ticket sales will go down if we're not competitive on the field or the court. So let's work with the collective a little bit. And then as those things improve, everybody actually wins. I think what I'm seeing is when members of the athletic department in positions of power recognize that they need to be willing to give up a little bit of what they view as their power and control and say, we want to work with this third party as a partner. We're partnering with you. We want this to be part of our offering. When I'm sitting there meeting with a major donor, I should be able to tell that major donor, we have a need here in sponsorship. We have a need here in our facility fund. We have a need here in our general fund. We have a need here in our collective. Where would you like to put your money? What would you like to see your money go? And I think that as more groups have started to work that closely together, yeah, the booster club at your school may have to revamp their offering because people want more than a card and the opportunity to buy tickets early. So have them do that. Design a new experience for them. There's schools that have experience design degrees. Utilize those students to design an actual experience for your booster club that boosters will want to be a part of it and not feel like they're obligated to. Do the same thing collectives have done in creating memorable experiences and opportunities, and work with collectives as an athletic department so that you're all on the same page and all working towards the same goal. And don't get so caught up in some of my money's going from this hand to this hand. It's all benefiting the same program. And now, again, with a 22% cut in your revenue, you're gonna need more partners that are in it for the right reasons and in it to work with you. And collectives are the perfect partner to step in and do that.
Those were the list of questions I had. I'm going to kick it over to some of the ones that we've gone through the chat. First one, and in some of these we've touched on a little bit, but I'll still kind of give them to you. Why do you think some collectives are adjusting to becoming a marketing agency?
I just think it's a natural progression. I think that naturally, as you work with more brands, as you work, donor fatigue is a real thing. Donors,
Sure.
and I don't think it's as much donors don't want to keep giving money. I think it's donors don't want to get hit up 5 times a year by 5 different people in the same department. I think donors would like to be able to have that conversation where they say, I've got $1 million to give. Where are your needs? And the university says, well, we have needs here, 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 and here. Where would you like to put your money?
I'll give credit to someone who we had on a couple of weeks ago, Carly Tarbell, who's a former Grover and someone who we work with at a bunch of different collectives. She said, donor fatigue is a thing. You know, it's not a thing. Customer fatigue. Um, and a lot of, I think, as you start to move and shift more towards from just being, hey, we need your $1 million so that we can fund, our O line, or we can get the kid or two that we really want. Customer fatigue is not a thing. Like, people will continue to give you money if they're getting value from you. And so, these guys do it better than most. Like, how you set up memberships, how you add tiers, how you add content, how you create value to get people excited to pay you.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, like, if I get a new pair of Nikes, like, it's the best part of my entire month. It's
Right.
like I'm excited to give that money to the company. And I think that's, to your point, I think it's the natural progression. Like, you have to move into more sustainable models so that you're not reliant on, you know, 4 or 5 folks to cut checks for
Yeah.
this thing to keep the lights on.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I mean, the collectives are building individual brands, and that's something else we encourage our collectives to work towards. Like, you think of the Grove, it's Ole Miss, and it's because they have activities, they have gear, they have the members see value in what they're doing, like you said, and they are in lockstep with the athletic department on everything they do. It's a perfect example, and that can be done
Dude,
anywhere.
Kiffin's shoes, dude. Like, that was such a cool one. And I know they sold out like within 4 minutes. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
hey, we've got
Walker didn't even pull me a pair. I told him I would sign up, pull me a pair. Didn't even get it. So,
dude,
so there is
are
no,
you a
there is.
founding member?
I guess I'm not a high enough member to qualify for Lane shoes.
um, what is the role of the collective association?
Yeah, we're really here to represent the interests of collectives moving forward. So one of the biggest things and one of the reasons we started is the um the narrative on what collectives were and why, how all these problems were happening because of collectives was wild.
Sure.
Not only in the public and the media, but actually we saw more so on Capitol Hill. So, quick story. I'll do a quick little rundown. Last
Hit it.
February, the NFL Combine, a group of collective leaders got together and we were like, we got to do something to stop this because the narrative's out of control. A couple months after that, it kind of led to the formation of the collective association. We decided let's just go. That we're not invited yet, but let's just show up. So we set our own meetings in DC. We went and had meetings with congressional staffers and Senate staffers and attended a hearing. We weren't a part of that hearing. The number one thing we found on Capitol Hill was nobody knew anything about collectives except for we were the reason the transfer portal was out of control. We were the reason that kids were getting overpaid and making decisions based off money. And it was all our fault, which is not true. And so we were like, okay, we got to fix that. So we started organizing. We got invited, and we did enough in that couple days we were there to be invited back to have Walker represent us at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing within a couple of weeks. Since then, we hired an advocacy and lobbying group up back there who's a former Nike lobbyist. He's great. And since then, it's just been like a full court press. We're there a lot. We're educating people on what it is. And I think if you've watched from the time we got involved till now, the entire demeanor towards collectives on Capitol Hill has changed. I mean, we're being contacted by staffs asking questions about things. They're asking us to
Sure.
help word certain draft bill, lines, things like that. We've earned their trust and because we show them the results. We show them what happens. We have athletes, join our Zoom calls and tell them what the collective has done for them. You don't see a lot of these bad stories out of the collectives anymore, and the ones you do, most of them really aren't from the collective. I mean, it's in reality, we're not naive.
Cowboy.
We're not we're not naive enough to think that we do things perfectly, but we feel like we do a lot better job than people think, and some of the stuff that gets pointed our way is just inaccurate. And so that was the role of the association at first, was to correct the narrative and educate people. And now just advance and protect the interests of collectives, but also the athletes that we work with.
How are the collectives paying for their overhead? And do you think they'll be able to do it at the same rate in this new world?
Yeah, that's different by every collective. So some of them through a membership program, they're going to use some of that for overhead. Some of them have donors that give specifically to cover those costs.
Sure.
Some of them just take, we're gonna a certain percentage of money generated from this program is going to fund our overhead. At some,
And I'll tell you now, some of them, even the school is starting to take on some of the cost
that's going to
for the
be
collective.
Yeah, that's going to be part of it now going forward, especially with foundations, school foundations being able to contribute to collectives, already happening in Missouri. There's going to be money there to support some overhead. So, yeah, a bunch of different ways. Each collective does it kind of differently, but and to a different level.
D2 and D3 collectives, where do you see them in the next 1 to 3 years? And do you envision these collectives, more of them opening up?
I hope so. I hope there's collectives at every single university at every level, because I think kids
We
should
just
be
signed
making.
on a D2 collective yesterday, dude.
There you go. See?
I'm on board.
Like I think this is a necessary thing. I think it's something that they weren't allowed to do this. Athletes weren't, and I think that was a shame. And all the people that stood by and empowered that system for so many years, um, well, they got rich, and now they're the ones speaking out about not letting us do it for the kids. I think every single one should have a collective. I hope more pop up. There are sustainable ways to do it that don't cost an arm and a leg. I think
I
that
was just gonna ask, like, how can a D2 or D3 program stand up a collective without it becoming, you know, incredibly burdensome to at least a handful of folks that have to do it, um, or to the schools themselves?
every university has fans. Every university has alumni, right?
Sure.
Now that universities can contribute too, I think there's a big opportunity to get a little bit from them, a little bit of support from the donors, a little bit of support from the fans, and you can build a functioning collective. At those levels, you
At
don't you
that
don't
level,
need
you
to,
really run into the cannibalization fear
for sure.
of, like, hey, we rely on, I went to a D2 school. Like, there's a local D2, there's a local grocer that's, they got their name on the stadium here. They I could see why they would be worried about, hey, our athletes are going to go steal those deals from us. Like, how do you help to kind of ease the fear on the cannibalization side? I've got my opinions, but curious yours.
I would say the closer you work with the collective group in the athletic department, I think you can manage those. I think you can almost be air traffic control of, like, look, this is where we get our money. These are areas you should target. I can promise you, with as many people give to that athletic department, for whatever reason, there's people who do not give to that athletic department. And I could give you example after example of athletic
Oh,
departments who
dude.
have burned donors and burned people who hold their money back because they don't like the athletic director or the deputy athletic director or a coach or whatever. That's new money waiting to be found. And if the approach is now, well, it helps our athletes, maybe that's a different answer that you get, right? You got to tap into the resources there. But if you don't all know what's out there and what's available and what's possible, at least that way you're not crossing over with your efforts. You're all going after different things.
Great answer, dude. The other thing I would say is there have been proven case studies that show incrementality. If you bring athletes into those kind of asset discussions, brands will spend 2x what they were spending.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because now you can create new kinds of marketing asset. You can create better social, you can create more engaging, interactive types of events or promotions. And so we've come to find that, hey, you bring athletes to the table, and it's actually going to make your brand more valuable
Absolutely.
Mr. and Mrs. Athletic Director at the D2, D3 school. So, um, yeah, and I love the point, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I can't tell you, as we bring members in from across the groups that we work with, a lot of them will typically ask, hey, do you give to the athletic department? Or are you a season ticket holder? Or, do you have a relationship with the university? And you'd be shocked to see how few people give to the annual fund
Right.
or buy tickets. Which I think as this becomes a more kind of cohesive, you know, working relationship, like athletic departments, we can bring you thousands of people that you've never touched before. Like that's meaningful. That's something that, you've never had a relationship with these folks because you just haven't connected with them in the ways that, have engaged them, and we have, and now we can bring them all together into an even bigger pool for continue to expand the pie. But
Absolutely. And let's take a look at athletic departments and fundraisers, development people, even corporate sponsorship people. You fall in your comfort zone of you got the people you've got, right? And that's who you keep tapping. You might find new people here and there, but for the most part, you've got your pool. There is this younger generation of people who have made money, business owners, entrepreneurs, that maybe for whatever reason are turned off towards the people that are there in charge, the people that have dealt with them or their
sure.
friends, family in the past. That there's a massive opportunity to tap into them. They're more experience-based individuals. You provide a great experience. I mean, again, I'm going to sign up for the Booster Club. I get to buy my tickets earlier and I get a t-shirt and a card. That's awesome. Or I can give my money to the collective. I can go on a private jet to watch my team play at a road game and have dinner with the starting point guard and have the football team show up at my kid's birthday party and then come give a speech at my office. Where am I going to put my money?
Yeah.
And schools and booster clubs have been so slow to adapt because they're all just, the way they operate. So collectives bring this whole other way, much
Well,
more.
and to be fair to them, like, they couldn't use the athletes in that way for a
Sure,
long time too.
sure.
And so
Yeah,
it's,
they weren't able to,
yeah.
but now they are. And now,
Right,
through collectives, people can get access to that.
right.
So that's where I think the alignment needs to take place, is it's opening a lot of doors for them to profession or modernize what they do and what their offering is as well.
You going to NACTA?
Of course, I'm going to NACTA.
No. How do people get in touch with you whether in Vegas or anywhere else? And I know I'm going to be sending some folks your way just directly kind of after this, but
Yeah.
for everyone out there watching.
My email address, it's super long. It's russ@thecollectiveassociation.org. Got to do something about that.
Love that.
Or just go on LinkedIn, Russell White on LinkedIn. You can hit me up there. If you have Thomas's phone number, you can text him and he'll give you my number and we can just call him.
Awesome. And we'll add your contact information and your socials and the TCA site and all that stuff on the back end of this. So dude, really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Yeah,
It's
it's been
always
a
a
lot of
blast
fun.
getting to hang with you. I'm sure we'll see you in Vegas in a couple of weeks, and looking forward to continuing to bring more and more folks into the organization.
Yeah, no, we appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate Basepath support of TCA, obviously, and appreciate your friendship and everything we work with together. I'm sure we'll talk before NACTA, but I look forward to
Sure.
seeing you there too.
That's right. I think we're actually talking tomorrow. So see you tomorrow, dude.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Have a good one, man.